Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Mara Radha Mara Radha Mara Jaya Radha Mara. Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paripura Acharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Loving Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paripura Acharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Sigaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki. Shri Gangamai Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki. Briyat Mridanga Srila Prabhupada's book distribution Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki. Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki. Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki. Shri Nrsingadev Ki. Shri Gopalji Ki Jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhana Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritta Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Shevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtake. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Letter, text number, chapter number 21, Instructions of King Prithu. Instructions by Maharaj Prithu. We're going to be doing texts 2 through 5 today. There's a short purport on 4. Settled with 5. So I'll just read the texts from 2 to 4, and then we'll do 5 together. Chandana Gutaya Toyardra Ratya Chatvara Margavat Pushpakshata Falishto Tokmair Lajer Archibir Architam. Fragrant water distilled from sandalwood and a guru herb was sprinkled everywhere on the lanes. roads, and small parks throughout the city, and everywhere were decorations of unbroken fruits, flowers, wetted grains, varied minerals, and lamps, all presented as auspicious paraphernalia. Savrindai kadale stambai, puga potai parishkritam, taru palava malabi, sarvata samalankritam. All the street crossings were at the street crossings there were bunches of fruits and flowers, as well as pillars of banana trees and betel nut branches. All these combined decorations everywhere looked very attractive. Text number 4. Prajastham Deepa Balibi Sambrita Shesha Mangalai Abhiyor Mista Kanyascha Mista Kundala Mandita. As the king entered the gate of the city, all the citizens received him with many auspicious articles like lamps, flowers, and yogurt. The king was also received by many beautiful unmarried girls whose bodies were beckoned with various ornaments, especially with earrings which collided with one another. Purport: offering of natural products such as betel nuts, bananas, newly grown wheat paddy, yogurt, and vermilion carried by the citizens and scattered throughout the city are all auspicious paraphernalia, according to Vedic civilization, for serving a prominent guest like a bridegroom, the king, or spiritual master. Similarly, a welcome offered by unmarried girls who are internally and externally clean and are dressed in nice garments and ornaments is also auspicious. Kumari, or unmarried girls untouched by the hand of any member of the opposite sex, are auspicious members of society. Even today in Hindu society, the most conservative families do not allow unmarried girls to go out freely or mix with boys. They are very carefully protected by their parents. While unmarried, after marriage, they are protected by their young husbands, and when elderly, they are protected by their children. When thus protected, women as a class remain an always auspicious source of energy to man. Text number 5. We'll do this one repeatedly. Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Brahma goshena chart vijam.
Brahma goshena chartijam.
Vivesha bhavanam viraha.
Vivesha bhavanam vira.
Stuyamano gata samya smaya.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Brahma goshena chart vijam.
Brahma goshena chartijam.
Vishvesha bhavanam vira.
Vivesha bhavanam vira.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Brahma goshena chart vijam.
Brahma goshena chartijam.
Vishvesha bhavanam vira.
Vivesha bhavanam vira.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Follow. Shanka dundubi goshena. Brahma goshena chart vijam. Vishvashamani vira. Stuyamano gatasmaya.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Brahma goshena kartijam.
Brahma goshena chartvijam.
Vivesha bhavanam vira.
Vishvesha bhavanam dhira.
Stuyamano gata smaya.
Stuyamano gatasmaya.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Brahma goshena chartijam.
Brahma goshena chartvijam.
Vivisha bhavanam dira.
Vishvesha bhavanam dhira.
Suyamano gatasmaya.
Stuyamano gatasmaya.
Shanka dundubi goshena.
Shankadundu Bigoshena Brahma Goshena Chartvijam Vishvesha Bhavanam Vira Stuyamano Gatasmaya. No one else? Okay. Shanka, conch shells, dundubi, kettle drums, Goshena, by the sound of, Brahma, Vedic, Goshena, chanting, Cha, also, Rijam, of the priests, Vivesha, entered, Bhavanam, the place, Viraha, the king, Stuyamanaha, being worshipped, Katasmaya, without pride. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. When the king entered the palace, conch shells and kettle drums were sounded, priests chanted Vedic mantras, and professional reciters offered different prayers. But in spite of all this ceremony to welcome him, the king was not the least bit effective. Please repeat. When the king entered the palace, conch shells and kettle drums were sounded. Priests chanted Vedic mantras, and professional reciters offered different prayers. But in spite of all this ceremony to welcome him, the king was not the least bit affected. Purport. The reception given to the king was full of opulence, yet he did not become proud. It is said, therefore, that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud. And the example is given that a tree which is full of fruits and flowers does not stand erect in pride, but instead bends downwards to show submissiveness. This is a sign of the wonderful character of great personalities. Om Jnana Tamarandhyasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavanishvari Vishwavana Shuti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavari Pashtadeshtare Namaste Jivanandaya Dasaya Vanacharine Prabhupada Vallabhaya Singasilavandoine Agyana Dvanta Gramanam Pashticha Patitatmanam Gyana Gurute Achitarine Chakshashena Maha. Okay, so here we have a nice verse, 2 verses with purports. So talk mostly about the second one. I'll mention something about the first one. So it's described here that King Prithu, being a great personality and great devotee of the Lord, was never proud. This is a symptom of an advanced personality, is that he's not proud because he understands his constitutional position as a servant and as part and parcel of the Lord. So the basic understanding of spirituality is to understand in factuality that I'm not this body. And I always ask people who I'm preaching to, beginner people, if you can understand you're not this body, but you're the soul within the body, then what is the activities of the soul? If you're a soul, what are you supposed to do? What does that mean to be a soul? Krishna explains, he says, Mamaivam Sho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that the soul is eternally, fragmentally part of me. Each soul within the material world and the spiritual world is a part and parcel of Krishna. And therefore, the constitutional position of the soul is to render devotional service to Krishna. So when we understand that in full, one who actually understands that position as being spiritual, it becomes very easy to be humble. And it becomes very easy to become a devotee of Krishna. Bahunam janma namante gyanavam mam prapadyante. And when one actually has that gyan, when one actually understands I'm not this body, then all of a sudden it becomes very easy to engage in devotional service. Mam prapadyante, that person surrenders unto me. Because he understands that Krishna is all in all. That there's really nothing else to do in this material world besides to serve Krishna. So as I was kind of contemplating this verse, I began to think about a verse in the Bhagavad Gita 3:27, because that's an example of how the living entity becomes puffed up. It says, Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. That the living entity in this material world, bewildered by false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality performed by the modes of material nature. So this is our issue within the material world. This is why one becomes proud. Because whether one is a devotee in pure Krishna consciousness, or whether one is a karmi or a fruitive actor, totally immersed in the material energy, in both cases, we're not the doer. We're not the doer of our activities. Krishna is explaining that bewildered by false ego, meaning the false ego ahankara, means that the living entity is thinking I'm this body. And when is bewildered by this consciousness of I'm this body, he therefore thinks himself the doer of activities performed by the body. Because he is the soul within the body, yet he thinks he's the body, so he's thinking I'm the doer. And a simple but gross example is, like the body has to do so many things. The body has to sleep, the body has to go to the bathroom, the body has to do this and that and this, but then we're thinking, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm going to sleep. But actually, you're really not in control, because the body's going to go to the bathroom, go to sleep, eat. It's going to do all those things without your, sanction. It has to do those things. That's the nature of a material body. So we're always under control. But bewildered by false ego, he thinks himself the doer of activities that are performed by the modes of nature. So in that way, the living entity is under the influence of the modes of material nature and being controlled, being pushed and pulled according to his own whims. It says, what's the verse? It says, Purusha prakriti stohi, bhongte prakriti jangunan, karnam guna sangosyad, syadasad yoni janmashu. That the living entity in this material world, Purusha prakriti stohi, is in the material world, bhongte prakriti jangunan. Bhongte means to enjoy. So he's enjoying things born of the modes of material nature. He's going about the material world trying to enjoy the various facilities the modes have offered him. Why is that? Karnam guna sangosyad, because he's associating with the modes of nature. Therefore, sadasad yoni janmashu, he's having to take birth and death in various wombs. Yoni janmashu, sad asad, various wombs that are good and wombs that are evil. So this is the position of the living entity in the material world. So if we want to avoid the modes of material nature, it says karnam guna sangosyad, we have to avoid associating with those things of the modes of material nature. So it's due to our association that we're becoming conditioned and that we're becoming influenced by this false ego. So how do we associate? It's very important when we understand what objects, what foods, what people, what places are we associating with. So when we associate with the mode of goodness, we become elevated to the mode of goodness. When we associate with the mode of passion, we go into the mode of passion. When we associate with the mode of ignorance, we enter into the mode of ignorance. So therefore, it's very important to associate with pure devotees who are not influenced by the modes of material nature. That's why Srila Prabhupada prescribes us this process of hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, because by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, not only are we hearing about all the great devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing about Maharaj Parikshit, we're hearing about Maharaj Prithu, we're hearing about Lord Krishna, we're hearing about Narada Muni. We're associating with those personalities directly by hearing their glories in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And also we're associating with Srila Prabhupada via the Bhaktivedanta purports. And so, at least it's my experience that when I read, and when I read a lot, my Krishna consciousness is just so much higher. Whereas if I don't read, I sleep more, I eat more. It's just like almost foolproof that the more I read, the more I feel like I can just keep going and keep serving because you're associating with Srila Prabhupada and you're getting that inspiration. Whereas when we associate with all the personalities on the Facebook, on the Instagram, then they're going to pull us down and degrade us. So that's a very important point to remember, that this conditioning, this pride, which is arising from our conditioning, is due to our association. Karnam guna sangosyat. Means we're associating with the modes of material nature. Therefore, the more that we keep contact with Krishna's internal potency, the more we're going to be enlivened in Krishna consciousness. And how do we keep contact in Krishna's internal potency? Hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping the deities, serving the Lord's lotus feet, serving the Lord as a friend, and surrendering everything to the Lord. If we can perform those activities, then we are no longer associating with material energy. That's why Govinda Das Kaviraj, in his prayer we just sang, he sings, please, my only desire is to engage in the 9 processes of bhakti. So on the other side of things, that pride or that false ego is there, and we're being controlled by the modes of material nature. On the other side of things is the devotee, who's also being empowered by Krishna. The difference is that on one side of things, one is being controlled by the Mahamaya, the bad master. She's whipping you, she's kicking you, she's bringing you up, she's giving you a little carrot, and she's smacking you down. This is how Mahamaya works. She's ruthless. And no matter how long you try to serve her, she's never satisfied. Whereas on the other side of things, Krishna says, Mahatmanastimam parta daivim prakriti mashritaha, that the Mahatmas are under the protection of the divine energy or the divine nature, daivim prakriti mashritaha. They're sheltered in the divine prakriti, who is personified by Srimati Radharani, the Yoga Maya. So when the devotees enter into that world via the process of satatam kirtayantamam yatantashtrijavrataha, we're always chanting the Lord's glories, endeavoring to serve the Lord, bowing down before the Lord. When one engages in those processes, we take shelter of Srimati Radharani and we enter into the divine potency, and therefore we're protected, we're sheltered. And the devotee, although he's doing so many wonderful things, what does he always say? It's by the grace of Guru and Krishna that I'm able to perform these activities. He understands that Krishna is performing these activities and that I have no power to do anything on my own. Krishna is the performer. Therefore, the devotee is free from pride. Even if he does the most wonderful activities, even if he's worshipped like King Prithu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's free from pride because he understands that ultimately all credit goes to Krishna. And even, such great spiritual masters like Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, they were worshipped. We see how Srila Prabhupada was worshipped like Krishna. So much opulence. Yet he was the dear representative of Krishna. And he was doing so on behalf of Krishna. He understood that actually this worship, which is going to me, is meant for Krishna. And therefore we say, Shakshad Daritvaina Samashtra Shastra. Right? That the guru is Shakshad Daritvaina. He's just like Krishna. Why is that? Because he's Priya Eva. He's dear to Krishna. So the person in the divine prakriti, the person serving Krishna, he becomes very dear to Krishna, and therefore he's sheltered under Srimati Radharani. He gives all the credit to Krishna. Therefore he becomes very prideless. Whereas the materialist, engaged in the service of the modes of material nature, he's always thinking, yes, I am very good at this. I'm such a nice guitar player. I'm such a nice, whatever it may be, nice kirtan leader. This is how the modes work. And he's thinking, I would like to talk about myself. I am the center of my world because I'm doing so many wonderful things. But actually, this is his infatuation with the modes of material nature. We find that great devotees, they don't speak about themselves so much. Actually, there's one nice pastime where, Hanuman was ravaging Lanka, and Ravana, he captured Hanuman before they lit his tail on fire. They captured him. And they said, "What is your name?" And Hanuman was actually confused because he's so fixed on thinking about Lord Ram. He's not used to thinking about himself. He almost forgot his own name because he was so immersed in his service to Lord Ram. So he didn't even know how to answer because he was so fixed on Ram. And so this is how the devotee thinks. It's, Radhanath Maharaj, when he was being encouraged to write the journey home, which is such an amazing story, how amazing Radhanath Swami's journey is. He didn't want to write about it because he's not so keen to talk about himself. He was actually pushed by Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Bhakti Tirtha Swami and various devotees to write that book because he doesn't want to talk about himself. He wants to talk about Krishna. This is how the devotee thinks. What are my leelas? My leelas are simply conditioning. They're, ultimately going to lead me to a lower destination, whereas Krishna's leelas are uplifting and they free us from birth and death. So in that way, the devotee becomes prideless because he understands his position. Like Guru Maharaj often says, like when you really analyze, what it is, what happened, really a thought that'll humble you is you're the guy who left Krishna. We're doing so much to serve Krishna. We're chanting Hare Krishna. We're devoted to Krishna, but actually we're the people who left the spiritual world. We're kind of the riffraff of the, souls in the cosmic creation. So we left Krishna. So what do we have to be proud about? So that this fourth canto actually is demonstrating this pride throughout. This is a theme throughout the fourth canto. You see it first in Daksha. Daksha, he was proud of his material position. Actually, we understand that one gets a position in the material world, whether one's a pauper, whether one's a rich man, that's all by the will of Krishna. So Daksha, he was proud of his position as a great Prajapati, and therefore he blasphemed the devotees of the Lord. He didn't show proper respect to the Lord and his devotees, and he offended Lord Shiva, and he had to suffer severely for that pride. And then you see that the pride of Suruchi, the mother of Dhruva, Suruchi was so proud because she was thinking, yes, King Uttanapad, Maharaj Uttanapad, I'm his favorite, and my son is greater than Dhruva. So her pride was great, and it's described that even though she offended Dhruva before he was a pure devotee, that offense still, it still mattered, and therefore she died due to a snake bite. So yeah, our acharyas explain. So Suruchi died due to a snake bite because she offended Dhruva, but she was proud of her position, rather than understanding that was due to the will of providence, will of the Lord. And then we see King Vena, who's the ultimate manifestation of false pride there, because he was the prince, he was born of the king, and he took advantage of that position and was proud of his position, and therefore abused his power and was ultimately disposed of by the Brahmins. So in that way, we can see that throughout the fourth canto, there's this theme. Maharaj Indra, very prideful. And because of that pride and that envy, he was wishing to steal the horses of Maharaj Prithu. We just read that. And so therefore he was almost punished, but because he's a devotee, he immediately took shelter of Krishna. He was not punished to the same degree as Daksha. So we see that this is a very common theme throughout the fourth canto, and that this is ignorance of our real position as servants of Krishna. That's our real constitutional position, is that we should serve and love Krishna. And so it's just a matter of understanding. The Ishopanishad says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatam jagat tena tyak tena bunjitaha magrida kasya svidanam. That everything, animate and inanimate, is owned and controlled by the Lord. Therefore, one should only take what is given to him according to his quota, knowing well what the rest of it belongs to. This is so important, that everything is owned by the Lord. That was one of Srila Prabhupada's last instructions, actually. Srila Prabhupada said, everything in this world is owned by Krishna. One who knows that is Krishna conscious. So this is a simple understanding, it's a simple realization, but unless we actually act on that realization, then it doesn't have any value to us. We have to really, really meditate on and act and understand how everything belongs to Krishna and everything is really meant for Krishna's service. This body is meant for Krishna's service. These words are meant for Krishna's service. This mind is meant for Krishna's service. Yes, confirmed. So everything is meant for Krishna's service. And in that way, we can make spiritual advancement. So I was thinking about different pastimes that, demonstrate this pride of the living entity. And I was remembering in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Chaitanya, he's not fond of the pride of his devotees. That as devotees, we have to be very humble, and to have any position, to have any knowledge or any leadership position in devotional service, that's the dangerous position. Sometimes I really think I was happier when I was just a bhakta, because it's like you're always kind of having to deal with, these, as people, you're giving class or you're doing a type of leading a kirtan, but when you're just the new person chanting Hare Krishna, standing in the back of the room, amazed by how cool everything is in Krishna consciousness, it's just sweet, but then as you start getting some position, it becomes, you have to always kind of veer off that pride, veer off that, false ego, because that could always come and swallow you. And then envy develops and all these negative emotions develop, and we're unhappy. So we have to really be humble. And so I was thinking about, the prime example of the devotees' humility is the Goswamis. Sri Rupa and Sanatan, they were great government administrators. Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami, they were government administrators for the government of the Shah, Nawab Hussain Shah. And they had high position. They were very wealthy. They were very learned. And we can't imagine the vast learning of the Goswamis. It's just hard to, it's hard for us to even conceive how learned these men were. They spoke, every language. They spoke Sanskrit. They spoke, Bengali. They spoke all the different languages. They spoke Farsi. They spoke so many different languages. Expert scholars. Expert in all the Vedas. We get pride. We read, we have some verses memorized. You can get some, right? They were expert in all the Vedas. And yet, when they saw Lord Chaitanya, they understood the goal of life. Their intelligence was so great that they can understand that the goal of life is love of Krishna. And so they were willing to leave everything behind, even risking their lives to go and serve Lord Chaitanya. Sanatan Goswami, first Rupa Goswami, he left. And then Sanatan Goswami, he stopped coming into work. He started just staying at home all day and calling all these sadhus over to read Srimad Bhagavatam. I think some of us might have actually had that experience. We just start getting too attached to Srimad Bhagavatam and then stop doing our material duties. So, he called all the sadhus over and they were reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and he kept, saying, I'm sick. So finally, Nawab Hussain Shah said, he sent his physician, he said, go to Sanatan's house. And I think Sanatan was Shakar Malik. So go to Shakar Malik's house and find out what's going on, where is he? He's sick. And then they came and then they found, he's just got a bunch of sadhus in there reading Bhagavatam. So then he came, the Nawab came to him and confronted him and said, what's the deal here? And so Sanatan Goswami said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go serve Lord Chaitanya. He said, so we'll throw him in jail. So they threw Sanatan Goswami in jail. And Sanatan Goswami bribed his way out of jail. And then, ran across, West Bengal to Orissa to meet with Lord Chaitanya. Actually, no, that's not what happened. But he went to seek out Lord Chaitanya at Varanasi, not Orissa, Varanasi. And so he was so, emaciated. And then he approached Lord Chaitanya and he said, Kayami, who am I? He says, I'm such a learned scholar. And people call me, they say, I'm a learned scholar and you're so great. He says, I don't even know who I am. And I believe them when they say that I'm a learned scholar, but actually I don't even know who I am. So Lord Chaitanya, he gave him the answer, Jivara Sarupya Hoy, Nitya Krishna Das, that you're an eternal servant of Krishna. You're a servant of Krishna. That's your position. And that's the position of being prideless. I know I've said this many times in here about the Orthodox Christian analogy, but when one is more realized, when one actually understands God's glories, it becomes very much easy to be a humble servant of God. Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvabhavartate iti matva bhajuntevam buddha bhava samanvitaha. That he's the source of everything and everything emanates from him, and that when one knows that, then they engage in devotional service with their entire heart. So why do we hear about Krishna constantly? Because by hearing about Krishna, we begin to understand a glimpse of his glories by his grace. And so when you understand Krishna's glories, it becomes very easy to serve Krishna. Why would I serve Maya? Why would I serve Joe Schmo down the street? Why would I serve my senses? Why would I serve any of these nonsense ideas, mental concoctions, when I can serve Krishna, the greatest master, and then get the greatest result? You get paid in bliss. So in that way, we get enlivened in Krishna consciousness by performing devotional service, and we become free of this false pride. Krishna humbles us in so many ways, especially the devotee, because when the devotee, actually desires to serve Krishna, Krishna will find a way to remove that pride in so many ways, shapes, and forms. Just like the gopis, they were, or Srimati Radharani, she was or all the gopis, but then later Srimati Radharani, all the gopis, they were so happy to be with Krishna. And finally, Krishna had told them, he said, because of your devotional service to me, there's nothing I can do to repay you. I couldn't give you the three worlds. Nothing I have. God himself is saying, nothing I have to give is worth what you've done for me. Therefore, please just be satisfied by my service. So then the gopis and Krishna, they began to walk through the forest and have joking words. And the gopis began to think, oh, we're the most beautiful girls in the whole universe because Krishna himself is associating with us. And so Krishna sensed their pride, and therefore he disappeared. And he took Srimati Radharani with him, and they escaped together. Srimati Radharani is the most humble gopi. She's always thinking she's the greatest devotee, but she's always telling all the other gopis, they're better devotees. You should associate with them, Krishna. So, but even Srimati Radharani, she had some slight glint of pride when she told Krishna, I can't go any further. Please lift me. And so Krishna said, okay. And then all of a sudden, Krishna was gone. So Krishna, he's not happy with our prideful mentality. We see that the devotee, he can be honored, he can be glorified, but actually, when you really, someone who's a real devotee, if you glorify them, they hate it. It actually bothers them to have their own glories chanted. You can see that, we just had Parameshwar Prabhu here. He gets real uncomfortable if you're glorifying him. Very uncomfortable. I was at Badri Narayan Maharaj. I was saying something to him. I said, oh, Maharaj, it's so nice having you here, and we really appreciate it. I started glorifying. He says, just stop it already. He says, you're embarrassing me. He says, I really don't like it. Please stop. The devotees, they become disturbed because they really feel themselves low because they see that Krishna is the doer. Krishna is the real performer of activities. Krishna is the real champion. So the devoted Krishna always humbles us in that way. And there's another pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Balabhabata. Balabhabata was another great learned scholar. And he was a great Vaishnav. Actually, he's an Acharya, he has his own line of disciplic succession. And he was very attracted to Lord Chaitanya. And it's described when he first met Lord Chaitanya, he had met them, and Lord Chaitanya was associating with Rupa and Sanatan. Oh no, he was associating with Rupa and Anupam. Sanatan hadn't arrived yet. Anupam is the brother of the Goswamis, but he left the world before, the Goswamis manifested their pastimes of of discovering the holy places in Vrindavan and writing the Gaudiya scriptures. So Balabhata came up, and Balabhata was very proud of his Brahminical nature. He was very proud of his knowledge of Vedic rituals, his knowledge, his birth as a Brahmin. He was very, very proud. And so Lord Chaitanya embraced him, and he kind of implied that, oh, you don't want to associate with Rupa and Anupam because they are, they're of a lower birth. But obviously Lord Chaitanya was associating with them. So he was kind of implying that, you think you're great. So he kind of subtly gouged his pride in that way. But later on, Bhagavatam went to Jagannath Puri, and he was writing his own commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. And he would always come up to Lord Chaitanya in kind of in a challenging mood, ask to read his commentary, ask to read his writings. And Lord Chaitanya was very, very cold with him. Lord Chaitanya always kind of ignored him, was very, very short with him. And he became angry. He actually became angry and started to, more aggressively try to, impose himself on the Lord. And so once it's described that he had said, I have written a commentary better than the commentary of Sridhar Swami. And Lord Chaitanya said, then I consider you a prostitute for going above the past acharyas. And so he was so disturbed that he actually began to try to approach Gadadhar Pandit. And so it's described that, he actually kind of like forcibly cornered Gadadhar Pandit and was like, I'm going to read these to you. And Gadadhar Pandit was like, oh no, what are the devotees going to think of me for associating with this guy and hearing this stuff? But eventually he came to his senses and surrendered to the Lord in humility. Realized that, he has to be humble in front of the Lord, that you can't impress the Lord with all these material qualifications. The Lord's impressed by your love and devotion, by your dedication to service. That's a nice pastime. That demonstrates that. And so, in that way, the devotee always recognizes Krishna's position as the doer, as the ultimate performer of all activities, and always recognizes that Krishna is in charge and that one has to be surrendered to what is Krishna's will. So the devotee is constantly trying to discern Krishna's will and act on behalf of Krishna. And that makes one very humble. Humility doesn't mean just like, walking around all... It doesn't mean... Prabhupada didn't walk like that. Prabhupada was the most humble person. Prabhupada also showed great, he walked with his head up. So humility actually means to do our service nicely, to understand our position, and to perform devotional service seriously. The more that, you can understand that when some devotee is just doing service, they're not asking for anything in return. And Mother Sundami is such a great example of humility because she's doing so much service, more than anybody, yet she's not, puffed up in the slightest about it. And she's probably, if she was here, she'd be really uncomfortable because I'm glorifying her. But she's doing so much service, and she never, has to glorify herself or even speak about herself. Rather, she speaks about service and she speaks about Krishna. This is the nature of a devotee. So Maharaj Prithu, although he's entering the palace, he is completely free from thinking himself great, because he's understanding that actually this is all meant for Krishna, and that I'm empowered by Krishna as the king to be of service to these people. So that's the consciousness of a devotee. Is there any discussion we can have? Gaura Sundar Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class. Love it. As you say, when a devotee do not like to be praised, glorified, because you don't like that because that can affect his ego, or you don't want to hear that. But if you really understand when the devotee, because devotee are very serving Krishna all the time, they got so much, purification. Everything a devotee can offer you as a glorification, uh, uh, it should be a blessing. If you don't, if you're taking like something to make you feel better, to pump you up, that is your business. But if you see, if we should feel it like a blessing to encourage us to get better.
Absolutely, you should take it as Krishna's mercy. And so when my Guru Maharaj explains this, that that it's a lower level consciousness for when someone's glorifying you, to say, oh, it's all Krishna, it's all
Yeah.
that's just Krishna. That's a lower level. My Guru Maharaj says that the higher devotees, they say thank you very much,
It's a blessing.
and they accept that because they're saying that although it's Krishna and all the devotee knows it's Krishna and knows it's Prabhupada's mercy, he's accepting that glorification on behalf of Krishna. It's like Maharaj Prithu is accepting this worship, or Srila Prabhupada was accepting so much worship on behalf of Krishna.
That's
And
right.
therefore, he's reciprocating in love with that person. And he's saying, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say in a very humble way. That's a higher level of person than the person who's just like, oh, I'm nothing, Prabhu, I'm lower than nothing. So the more humble thing is to go, thank you very much. And once when we were in Sedona, my Guru Maharaj was glorifying Ganganath a little bit. And Ganganath was he's like, no, Prabhu, please stop. And my Gurudeva says, sit down and take it like a man.
No.
He said, sit down and take it like a man. I'm going to glorify you. You're going to have to take it and say thank you.
It's a gift when a devotee, when somebody give you something, you're accepting. It's a gift.
Yeah.
But if you try to use it, for your own self, it's no good. So you accepting it as a gift can make you feel better and help others.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Haribo.
Any other comments, questions? We still got a little bit of time. I ended a little earlier than usual today. No? Chandrika, I have a question for Chandrika. Where's Ramna?
They were coming over today to do some work on the outside. They were coming at like 7:45. So we go for that. So it seems like pride comes from, the root of it comes from, like childhood, when we react, to certain things like, at school or at home. Or so in order to, even if we sort of get into the root of where that pride came from, in order to sort of bash it away and just, surrender to Krishna and not be proud and know that this is all coming from Krishna.
Yeah, I always find it helpful that, like when you analyze the real origin of pride, in my perspective, pride is the ultimate sin. That's what made Satan. Satan he was proud. And Satan was the most beautiful. Lucifer was the most beautiful of all the angels. And, that the consciousness of wanting to be Krishna, when you really think about that, like, and even lust, and that's kind of the root of it all. And it comes down to that envy of Krishna. And when you look at all the different anarthas we're facing, anger, envy, lust, illusion, greed, all those things are ultimately coming from envy of Krishna, because we think we're the enjoyer. And so when when someone wants something really badly, or even the mundane rasas in the material world, the reflections of the spiritual ras, that the husband is thinking, oh yes, I am maintaining this family so nicely, I'm the maintainer. And in that way, the boss is thinking, I'm the boss of this, or I'm the controller of this body, or this is my wife, and she's enjoyed by me, but everything is actually enjoyed by Krishna. And so when you really analyze every situation that you find yourself in, mentally, and the pride is just a manifestation of this kind of, these are all like fruits and flowers of this single disease, that we kind of want to be Krishna. We don't want to be the servant of Krishna. We want to be Krishna. And so we become proud when we are feeling like I am Krishna. And I was just actually speaking with Parameshwar Prabhu, and I was kind of like, having, I was inspired after his class, the Mantra Ways. I sat down and talked with him, and he was giving some like nice spiritual advice. And he was saying, it's one thing to, I distribute a lot of books. It's one thing to distribute lots of books. I've seen so many devotees that have distributed more books than me in a short period of time. I've been distributing books for many years, and therefore I have the highest scores and whatnot. But, I know devotees who've come in and distributed, just done so much so fast and then disappeared and never were devotees again. And he says, the hardest thing for people to do is to realize that ultimately you're still trying to be Krishna, that even you're doing all this service, you're doing all that, you're, people are calling you Maharaj or whatever, still you're trying to be Krishna. And until you realize, he said, until you realize that you're just another brahmachari, you're always going to be, suffering in the mind, and you'll always kind of face the unsteadiness. Because a lot of times on the lower level of devotional service, you start to get happy or content, even puffed up a little bit about that position. Whereas the most humble devotee, really, his taste isn't coming from any of that. His taste is coming from hearing and chanting about Krishna. And that's the position of someone who's an actual, serious, advanced Vaishnava, that they're not getting taste from glorification, they're not getting taste from, being the best at something. So that pride is a result of, ultimately we want to be respected like Krishna. We want fame like Krishna. We want adoration like Krishna. We want profit like Krishna. We want gratification like Krishna. And, those things are natural for the devotee if they're doing it in service to Krishna. Actually, the devotee gets all the fame. Srila Prabhupada is the most famous. Look how famous Jesus Christ is. Prahlad Maharaj, this happened millions of years ago, and we're still saying, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. Dhruva, and these devotees, so famous. Throughout the three worlds, they're famous because they were famous servants of Krishna, and they're adored. Who can be more adored than Srila Prabhupada? Who can be more adored than Jesus Christ? They're so adored. They get all the fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. Yet they're getting it because they're serving Krishna. So we also are we also take part in that. Krishna shares his experience with us. It's the kindness of Krishna in the spiritual world. Krishna is sharing his love. He's sharing his world with us. But because we don't want to accept ourselves as the servant, rather we want to be the Krishna, then in that way, we always find ourselves struggling to get that, because we want that fame, profit, adoration, distinction without Krishna, right? That I'm famous because I did this and I did that and I did this, but the devotee is famous because he did that for Krishna, and Krishna reciprocated with him, and Krishna empowered him, and Krishna came to him. So yeah. Nice question. All righty, it's 8:56. I think we can end now. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.